Hello, thank you so much for. Oops. Just a second, okay? Check. Hmm? Hello, hello. I'm sorry, there was a little microphone issue. Can you hear me now? Check, check. Is it good right now? Hello, hello, hello. Is it too loud? Okay, that's good. Let me know if it's too loud or too weird. It should be good. Okay, let's good. Alright, so this is the Sashiko Live Streaming where I stitch Sashiko while talking about Sashiko. This is not a lecture, this is not a webinar, this is not a lecture, this is not a webinar, this is not the tutorial, so I will not be able to talk about technical topic, but I'm happy to talk about some cultural issues. So if you have any questions about culture of Sashiko, please let me know. I'm happy to answer that while stitching. I brought some topic today, but besides that, I can answer that. Several. Is there any? Nope, there's no announcement today, so I will be stitching as always the same pattern. I'm sorry, it's boring. Same. I didn't say boring. I'm sorry. It's the same pattern. And yeah, I will be stitching. Oh, yes, I remember one thing. So the YouTube changed some of the setting, and before, like, until yesterday, until this live streaming, I could control the ads to be played only before the live streaming. So when you join the live streaming, you would watch some ad and then you can join that. For some reason, I don't have that option anymore. Like, I just cannot find it right now. They changed some setting. So I tried to make it as least frequent as possible by setting it. If you find it like it's annoying, please let me know. It can be. I will be able to try to change. I will try to learn more, and I will adjust that. But there might be some ads in the live streaming which can be annoying. So let me check that, and if it happens, please let me know, and let's see what I can do. Okay, there we go. I will change my camera. Whew. What about the colored thread? As part of this technique. I received some question like, is it okay to use different colors Sashiko thread? Like I often, not often, almost always I use this indigo colored fabric and white thread. So many people think that this is the traditional form, and using the other colors of fabric or thread is wrong or non-traditional. It is true that this was done a long time ago and we have been doing that for a long time. Indigo, dyed fabric, and white thread. But I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. Using another color or different colors. Bright colors, go ahead. Different colors of fabric, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a preference. I got too used to this combination that I feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable when I stitch with the, let's say, bright blue fabric with red thread. I just don't feel comfortable stitching. If there's a purpose to use that specific color, of course it's gonna be okay. But since I don't stitch for, I rarely stitch for some specific purpose to make the project. As the result, I feel comfortable. It's good. It's very easy for my eyes. It's good to my eyes. I can relax. I don't have to think about anything. So it's just a nice combination to me. It does not mean that this is the only traditional thing. So it's perfectly fine to use different color, different fabric. But it's nice to think about it ahead. I mean, it's nice to think through it. Instead of saying like whatever color is fine. Well, I'm saying whatever color is fine, but it's kind of different things, I guess. But yeah, that's my question. That's my answer for the question. That kind of linked to my topic today. Last week, I had a pretty good live streaming about embracing the imperfection. I really recommend you to watch that if you haven't. It was a very good. It's kind of silly to say that it was a good live streaming from my mouth, but it was quite good live streaming to explain how wabi-sabi became the beauty imperfection. So one interpretation in Japanese, and then one translation of the interpretation as the beauty in imperfection, and then people in English interpreted that beauty in imperfection to their practice. As the result, we now have the word embrace the imperfection, but that's not really the core of wabi-sabi nor this Sashiko stitching. And it has been long. It has been many years that I cannot explain what is going on. The previous live streaming was one good one, which I could explain that pretty well. So if you have not watched that, please take a look at it. And today's topic is kind of like related to that, which is imperfection and pride. What is the rule, Sashiko? Yeah. So the color was a good question to link to this topic. What is the rule for Sashiko? If you take any of my class, either the main one, core and essence, or domestic art introductory course, my message is always the same, that there's no such a thing as right or wrong in Sashiko, and there's no rules. And it is true. It is true that it is true that there's no rules for that. However, it does not mean that we don't have any preference. And it does not mean that we don't have any pride in what we do. So that's gonna lead to the imperfection itself is okay, but that's mainly the result. It's not the purpose. We have a very big group of artisans. We had a very big group of artisans, and they all had some sort of pride. So that was. I don't want to minimize their pride by saying that I celebrate, like, you know, the stitches size do not have to be big. You know, the stitches size do not have to be small. But when we learn the rhythm or when we use these kind of needles, stitches size end up with, not a, has to be, end up with sort of like, rice grain size is not the answer, but it's gonna end up with being like rice grain size or even smaller. But recent Sashiko photos have a very big, large stitches. Again, there's nothing wrong with the large stitches, but there were Japanese artisans who spent their life to make smaller, even stitches with their pride. So I don't want to minimize that. Can I see what's going on behind the fabric with the left hand so you do not stuff in yourself? Please take my workshop for that. I do not change what I do in live streaming, because if I start doing that, the live streaming become like tutorials, and I don't like that. I do not prefer doing that. Live streaming is the place for me to enjoy stitching, so I'm not going to do that. For that, please take the workshop, because I explain everything. So the pride is something I would like to make sure to pass it down. The stitches doesn't have to be even, stitch doesn't have to be small, but I want them to try to be sort of better, I guess. If they are just the Sashiko stitcher, I think this is not, if their purpose is just enjoying Sashiko, this urge is not that strong. But if they were teaching it, then it makes me feel a little weird that teachers are saying that I embrace the imperfection. It's a completely different thing. If the stitchers are saying like embrace the imperfection, I understand that. If the stitchers are saying like embrace the imperfection, I understand that. But if the teachers are saying embrace the imperfection, that's a different story. And that's, we don't recommend to embrace it. I want it to be better every day. Every time you stitch, I want you to feel more comfortable in what you do, to make it like, what we can see. So big stitches are not wrong, but it does not make, well, it's more like personal preference, I guess, but it's not really like Sashiko-like to me. It's the preference. I'm not saying they're not Sashiko. To me, strictly speaking, that's not the style of Sashiko I know I would like to pass down. Like stitching one by one is just purely not my style. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. But stitching one by one is going to ignore pretty much everything I share. Making stitches one by one is not the style I teach or I share. But so if one can stitch in the rhythm, the stitches are going to be like end up with sort of small. Like this might be too small for some project. Some project might require bigger stitches, but the stitches will not gonna exceed the length of, let's say, half of the needle. Maybe yes, but if like the stitch is the length of the needle, that's a little different kind of style of stitching. I wouldn't, in my own strict categorization, it's not probably Sashiko. It is Sashiko in the bigger form. And, if they want to call them they're stitching Sashiko, I'm perfectly fine as long as they acknowledge the story behind it. But in the strict, narrow categorization, it's not Sashiko to me. Are there preferences for different rhythm based on the pattern you're stitching? Yes, and at the same time, no. The reason I say yes and no is that and the pattern is one of the biggest factor in the rhythm. especially either it's straight or curve. Curve or straight is going to be very, very big factor to define the rhythm. At the same time, what I feel on that day or how I do good on that day is gonna affect more. So right now I probably do make better stitch. I don't know why, but I'm feeling better today right now. I don't know. But it's the pattern is a kind of secondary. The first one is either it's straight or curve. How tight the curve is can affect that, and also what is my mood on that day. So then each combination has the preference for the rhythm. So probably the best combination is anger plus straight line. When I'm very angry and when I have a project that I can stitch only straight lines, that is probably the rhythm I like. It's probably going to be 4 of the rhythm, and I probably like that most. I'm not saying I should be angry intentionally to get that rhythm. Then it's not gonna happen. But the combination wise, that's probably the rhythm I like the most, which I can think of. But at the same time, it can be very different from not one after another, based on the individual. So you may find completely different patterns as the better one. ジェイドさん、こんばんは。I may have got a little sick. Little bit of... Well, it's the season, right? In September, October, it's the season of little getting sick. I have to be careful. Yeah, I think one of the concepts that I really have to fight back or push back is the attitude toward stitching. I agree, and I pretty much 100% agree with the current acceptance trend. So I accept who I am, I accept what I do, stop judging myself, stop, pressuring myself, stop rushing myself. We are good as we are great as we are. So let's accept what it is, let's accept who we are, let's embrace right now, the moment. And I agree with that. It's a very healthy approach to life, and then I want you to accept a lot of things throughout Sashiko. And I want you to accept Sashiko stitches as well. But at the same time, there's another of me saying that that's not Sashiko. Acceptance is very much the core of Sashiko because they had to accept their challenging life. So acceptance is very, 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 very important part of Sashiko. At the same time, acceptance itself is not going to fulfill the practice we do. And what is missing is pride. And pride and acceptance might not come well together. It might contradict within themselves. It sounds like it. That's why it's really difficult to explain. But when I have to describe what I had as my childhood, like stitching experience, that's not acceptance. that is just pride. Pride on what they did and what they do. This might be just because of my family, because of my experience. Although acceptance is a very important part of this practice, and if I have to summarize what Sashiko is all about, I may even say like acceptance, stitching of acceptance of the harsh life, difficult life. That's how the Japanese practice Sashiko. But at the same time, I feel something very big is missing. We are humans, so the stitches are not gonna be small or even as we wish. But in many Sashiko's form, not only my Sashiko, but also the other form of Sashiko, advocate the importance of making smaller stitches, not the rice grain size, like a much smaller than the rice grain size. Again, it's not the answer. Well, it might be the answer for their Sashiko, but it's not the only answer in Sashiko. And there's nothing wrong with making big stitches. Again, however, that acceptance itself is missing something really big. And as of now, I have to put the word pride to describe that something missing. I think it's the Well, once we get a rhythm, the stitches like stitches will be smaller regardless. Interesting that you like your rhythm when you are angry. I tend to clean not stitch when I'm angry. Yeah, I think we have a different things to kind of calm us down. But yeah, stitching for me, I clean when I am kind of not as sad. Like when I don't feel like doing, well, it's a procrastinating. Yeah, it's not a feeling. I'm sorry, I'm just procrastinating something else. Yeah, I clean when I have things to do in front of me, and which we have word for that, procrastinating. Yep, but yeah, now for the anger, maybe we all have some kind of rituals or practice to put it that in our orderly day. And you know, we have to kind of redefine the word Sashiko, what is the orderly, because if the Sashiko's core is the orderly for the Japanese who practiced Sashiko a few hundred years ago, then nobody's actually stitching Sashiko in a very strict form. Like the Sashiko existed is not gonna happen today when we really talk about it from strict perspective. But I think we all have our own way to apply it, and you know, that's why I keep saying like you are the future of Sashiko, and Sashiko's future can be something different. We just like to make sure that where it comes from. Unshin for me means more even stitches and actually stitch faster if I keep to the rhythm. Yes, so that's pretty much all I teach. So by focusing on the rhythm, we end up with having the smaller even stitches and faster. When we focus on one perfect stitches or one big stitch, we tend to lose the rhythm. As the result, we don't stitch faster or even. And again, that is nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't want to cut and paste somewhere, so I keep saying don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with it, and it can be Sashiko. But in very strict categorization, for me, it's not the Sashiko I practice or I try to pass it down. But I'm so glad that this concept is right now spreading. The word unshin was always there because that can be applied to many other stitchery form in Japan. Each stitchery form has their own type of unshin. So unshin itself is not the special word, but before 2016, I don't know any. I did not find many, or none of any, or many videos showing that. There was one lady who was showing Sashiko stitching about 10 years ago. When I uploaded my first video in 2016, I looked around it on YouTube, kept googling Sashiko stitching, unshin stitching, Sashiko unshin, those keywords. And there was always one lady. She's Japanese and I forgot her name. I don't know if she keeps doing that, but she speaks English. She may have had a shop in the US. I do not remember. Her name is probably Miho-san or something like that. But she was explaining how to do the unshin, but it was different style, and I didn't have a chance to contact her. I don't think she's active right now. She might be, but kimono stitches are referred to unshin as well. Yes, so unshin for kimono wasai is very different. We don't use this thimble for the kimono wasai. So the unshin itself is very, it's the word, so it can be universal. Yeah, it's very nice to be able to communicate the word with unshin. Unshin can be translated as moving the needle, but moving the needle itself does not make sense without actual practice. Actual practice will fulfill what it is. So I'm glad that we can communicate on the same word. Come on, sorry for this note. And like how we were talking about this topic today or like a little before that. But when we very much talk about strict definition of Sashiko, nobody is really stitching the original form. Like I sometimes advocate the original form of Sashiko stitching, but in a very strict form, in order to do it, I have to pretty much lose everything. Like I shouldn't be having this house. I should have my family, but they have to kind of suffer to feel cold that they need patches tomorrow, which we won't do that. We can always go to Target or Walmart to get a blanket. Much easier, much faster, much safer. And we live in that kind of world. We have choice. So it's almost impossible to recreate the practice we had to practice 300, 400 years ago. So we kind of have to imagine that we appreciate what we have right now. We enjoy that we don't have to go back to that age. But again, back in those age, I don't think that they were embracing the imperfection in this practice. They had to stitch, so they were stitching without even any of those concepts. They had to stitch, so they stitched. It may be as simple as that. At the same time, if the stitching was the only purpose, I sometimes wonder why there are so many beautiful pieces left. And I, feel like that's the pride there too. Somebody's pride, regardless of the condition, how harsh it is, they wanted to make something beautiful. They wanted to, make even stitches. That is the pride, I think. So, I just don't want to be disrespectful to those who... There are many. We have no idea how many. We have so many Japanese who had done Sashiko stitching in the past. And their voice are not heard. They probably didn't even try to leave those voice because that was just too normal, too ordinary for them. But it does not mean that they did not exist. They kept quiet. They did not leave the voice. It does not mean that they didn't exist. They existed, and therefore we have this practice today. So my goal is to make sure to involve as many voices as possible. And when I imagine their voice, I think it's the pride. They wouldn't say it's a pride, but I think it's pride. So I want to be proud of your stitches and then keep having the pride on that. Acceptance and being proud of is a little different thing, right? What is the difference between accepting it and be proud of things? I want you to be proud of. Be proud of is like doing something, like try something, and then as the result we can be proud of. It can be both, but I want to try to be proud of as well. Hello. So yeah, come to think of it, a lot of things are missing. Since last year, I keep saying that the Sashiko introduced in English is not wrong, but insufficient or not explain the whole. The same message exists. The same message, same concept. There's no change at all. But I recently started changing the phrase itself. I hope it's the same meaning, but more articulate on what's going on. Which I'm saying is that Sashiko introduced in English is simplified and romanticized at the same time. Simplified and romanticized at the same time because of the process is kind of it's not a complex, but there's so many process to be introduced. It's like a telephone game. There were Japanese people who stitch Sashiko, but there are not that many who can talk about it right now from their voice, because Sashiko is once extinct, not extinct, but many people decided not to continue Sashiko when they became wealthy. As the result, there are not that much first voice. There are not that many people who can define what Sashiko is to today's world. And those definitions can be different based on where. So one interpretation of what Sashiko is in Japanese itself is already kind of confusing. There's a lot of but there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of space to agree or disagree, or agree to disagree. And so one interpretation got translated, and in those translations, unfortunately, if the translator does not know the culture well, it can be very much simplified. A equal B is not going to happen sometimes in translation, especially in the cultural context. It's quite difficult to make A to B like equal. It's not, A to B is the translation of the culture, but as the result, it does not be A to B, A equal B. And even after that translation, they interpret what Sashiko is in the trend. So there are 3 steps: interpretation in Japan, translation, and the interpretation in English. Of course, it becomes something different. Now, I have 2 ways. I can keep speaking up like that, or I give up. And I will probably do both. But unfortunately, at some point, I have to probably start calling what I do as Japanese Sashiko. It's very sad that I have to call it Japanese Sashiko. But that may be the only one way to distinguish that in this trend. And there might be more like a friendly or very easy to explain what it is. From what I understand, when clothing became cheaper to buy in Japan, the need for saving fabric with Sashiko was not needed. That is very correct. That is, it depends on, when happened is depend on where they lived. And some area did not go through that phase. So there are like communities, there are places where there were people who still needed to save fabric for reinforcing it. But most of the places, the majority of the places, they went through the not a revolution, not a revolution, like, you know, it changed. The society became better in terms of wealth. So yes, so for that, when that happened, Sashiko naturally became less important. Then you may ask, like, what are you doing then? Like, why are you stitching if this is the stitching practice we gave up? We decided to discontinue. Well, there are people who revived that for the beauty, for the practice wise. For the beauty and for the practice, some of them revived it as the cultural practice, or sometimes for the business. But so it's not exactly the same as the Sashiko stitching that they practiced. Again, it's not possible. It's not. It is probably possible, but it's gonna take a lot of insanity to do that, and I don't plan to do it. So there are a lot of things to think about, and as I wanted to learn the rhythm and running stitch, and when you can do the unshin, you don't think about it that much. You don't think about making the perfect one stitch, so you will have a lot of time to think about, or even, like, you know, watch something or think about something. When you think while stitching, I want you to kind of expand your imagination, of course, within your capacity, within your capability. You don't have to, you know, learn something new. It can be within yourself. Just try to kind of imagine what it'd be like. As long as we imagine, I think we can keep the culture. Issue happens when we stop imagining that. God, this is... I was stitching something different today. I was stitching on the denim jacket today, before this live streaming. After that denim, this is extremely easy to do. Like, I'm probably running today. Today's stitches are probably good. My hands are pleasing. being pleased. My hands are being pleased. Is it? It's not a sexual way to say. Oh yeah. Sorry, nothing. Yeah, we have a lot of questions about how we can apply this culture to today's world. What I have been trying to share is probably, it's almost about the story from the past to now, including how Sashiko has become something different. And this now is gonna be like yesterday now. It's like a little always past. But at some point, I have to, and I would like to talk about the future. And it is very challenging for me because the questions about the future requires much more imagination and understanding of what I'm saying. I have to use my brain. I cannot stitch well thinking about the future. I can talk about the past, how I felt, how I do it, how it is different. Those are not that difficult, but thinking about the future, like for example, let's say like what is the Sashiko for us today? Ooh, that's today means not yesterday, today and tomorrow and toward the future. That's a fantastic question, but I need a preparation. Or I need to stop stitching. And if I stop stitching, this live streaming does not make sense. So I will do something focusing on that. I think it's about time to do that. I'm the past, and it's very important to explain the past. And I've been doing that. I will keep doing that from now on too. But the question will probably go toward the future a little bit from now on. I love your indigo fabric. Yeah, this is a very good fabric to stitch. I need to keep this company running. This is the best. Sorry, my nose are very bad today. Can I? Oh, I see this. Wow, the YouTube changed a lot of platform user interface. What is that? Wow, I have to learn the difference between what I used to have and what I have right now. So if there's any like inconvenience on your end, please let me know. Well, I mean, I don't know if I can fix it or not, but they like I am seeing like YouTube Studio page, which means like for those who upload the videos or do the live streaming, there's a like a video, not a video, there's a web page that I can see. And it has a lot of different features right now. Wow. Wow. Keep saying wow. I mean, they changed a lot without telling me, so okay. Let's keep. Yeah, I hope that. YouTube looks the same from my end, unfortunately. It's still like red and black. red square and it's, white triangle, same logo, but I had a little difficulty to set up today's live streaming. I have to again read a lot of documents to understand what's going on. But it's good that there's no difference on your side. Yeah, as long as I use the YouTube from me as a viewer side, I didn't see any difference, but it didn't happen last week, so I'll check that. Ah, come on. Sorry. Well, it's like time flies. Oh my. It is almost October. I cannot believe that. Like, we keep talking about those things every year. Like, wow, it's already March. I cannot believe that we just had a New Year's. And I'm saying exactly the same thing right now. Oh my god, it's October. I cannot believe that summer is already over. But yeah, this is how it is, I guess. I cannot, I cannot believe that I have been teaching Sashiko for like 6 years. I hope you recover quickly. I just joined the live streaming recently and feel relaxed watching the stitches. I enjoy sequencing emoji, spamming with another random viewer whilst here going to sleep. Good night. I'm glad that you enjoyed it and relaxing. Have a good night. My daughter does not find my voice as sleepy voice. Like, I was a stay-at-home dad until she was 2.5 or so. We decided to send her to daycare around 2.5, or even like a little bit after 2. Anyway, many parenting books or tutorials say that if you read a book to the daughter or a child, they sleeps while reading, right? I don't have one single memory that she fell asleep while me reading or talking to her. She has several times fell asleep while eating, or running and then stop and then start sleeping. For some reason, my voice are not soothing or not sleep invoking to her. It's so interesting. When my wife read her the book, she goes to sleep like pretty well. Time really does fly. It's scary. It's really scary. We don't think about it. We try not to think about it, but it's pretty scary. But I have a theory, though. I sometimes share this theory, but when I do Sashiko, the time goes even faster. Like, sometimes I start stitching around, let's say, I don't do any longer, but when I was a little younger, let's say I start stitching around 10 o'clock, right now, 10 o'clock. And I find myself stitching at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So where is that 5 hours goes? Where did those 5 hours go? And I don't remember. I see the stitching as the result. And the clock is indeed differently showing the different time. But I don't have any memory or any a realization, any feeling that I had stitched for that many hours. It's quite scary. I sometimes doubt that I might have some illness like that. But this happens to many, many people. You may have experienced a similar thing. You start stitching, and for some reason, time has passed like 4 hours, 5 hours, without even realizing it. It happens especially when you have to wake up in the morning, early next morning. But it happens not only to me, but the others, and it happens quite often. It's not like once a year, once in a lifetime. It's like once a month, once a week sometimes if I stitch that much. So, I have a theory. Now, it can be very much hypothesis, not a theory, hypothesis. It can be proven wrong. But when we stitch, our body does not recognize the time. So when we get aged, when body realizes that we are aging, right? We spend a day today, we aged a day. As the result, our body reacts to that. What if that body does not realize that 5 hours did not exist? We might not get old for that 5 hours. Don't you think that's kind of valid? It sounds crazy, I understand. But this might be true, as it explains why there are so many energetic elderly artisans I had when I was a child. They were so energetic and like they were so young. I mean, their age was not young, but they were so young. So the more, in the extreme theory, if I keep stitching 24/7, I don't age at all. It does not make sense, but that's kind of like a foundation of the theory, and it might not be so wrong. Yep. If there's any biology professors or researchers here, I apologize for this shenanigans. If that is true, like the human's dream, come true, like never aging, but it's kind of non-scientific one hypothesis. It might be true. I don't know how to prove it, but biologically it's not gonna happen. Physically it's not gonna happen. Physics, mathematics, all the science is not gonna prove that, but maybe. Glad I was Glad I was finally able to join one of your live streaming. I've followed you for a few years now, and while your domestic course, time flies with craft, but at least you have something to show for the time. That is very true. Thank you so much for joining the live streaming and doing Domestika. It has been a great course. One of the biggest worry, I don't know if I talked about this before, but so Domestika contacted me in 2020 for the first time. Did I talk about the, I probably did not talk about the backstage story, but yeah, I probably talked somewhere. But I declined their offer 3 times. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to Susan's comment. But then if you stop stitching, you suddenly age, all those years catch up with you. Well, then that's gonna be the movie. Susan, if that is gonna be true, that's gonna be the movie. Like, there is a movie like that, right? No, I'm not. That's the movie material. That's pretty scary. No, no. Well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe so, but that's scary. You guys stitch 20. Well, there's no way to stitch 24/7 for a year. you know, stitching for 24 hours is not a problem at all, but 24/7 for years, that is a movie material. Yeah, let's go back to the domestic, of course. I will do 10 minutes or 15 minutes more. Let's see, until this. Yeah, I declined the domestica's offer 3 times, and the 4th person was the reason I decided to offer the domestica. I was not sure if I could deliver my message in that platform. They did not beg me, but they kept offering if I was interested. And I kind of promised them that I'm not gonna do that because I don't like domestica or I have a problem with domestica. I just had a problem with teaching style like that. Like, I had the same vision. I wanted to deliver, you know, I wanted to make a platform where anybody can take the Sashiko class. So that message was same, but I wanted at least the producer to understand what Sashiko is before they work with me. Otherwise, I knew that we would have disagreement and fight. Even after we talked about those things, we had a civil disagreement in the process. We cleared that. That's why it's all out. But that's why it took a long time to release it. And yeah. My worry was that if it's going to cover, if it's offering enough information to explain the Sashiko we practice. And, you know, thankfully the review explains that it's pretty satisfying contents. So I'm happy with it. But at the same time, I would like to make sure that I can offer what Sashiko really is. So it is the introductory course, and I hope that this can catch up some of the Sashiko stitching, and I can encourage them to keep learning. The domestica course itself is not going to offer the everything I would like to pass down. It's simply not possible to do that in that platform without me knowing who is learning. So it's just one story, but the start is a very good point. And especially in this society where anybody can be the teacher and they are teaching something completely different. So it is very important to have that kind of gate. Gate? Like easy gate to get in. Yeah. So I'm glad that it was done on you. It was my term. I think I was very difficult. I was very difficult. I can be quite difficult when it comes to that, so. But I'm glad that I could make that. Now it is my recommendation to start to learn what Sashiko is. It does not end there. So I want them to keep doing that. Keep searching, keep learning, keep watching, keep enjoying it. It's like, the biggest misunderstanding in Sashiko is that in English, misleading things in English is that they teach as if there is the answer that they have to follow. And there are answers or rules for each Sashiko exists in Japan, but that's not a universal. When it's not universal, the whole point is to find their own rules and answers. And that's the first step to do it. Of course, one need or want to have something to follow. That's something I can offer. But it is quite misleading at some point, so I hope that's gonna be a good path, gateway. Gateway might be the word I was looking for. I'm late today, but I'll catch up with the archive later. Thank you so much for coming, Sashiko-san. I hope that people can continue enjoying Sashiko. For sure. Well, I will do one more thread, then I will complete today's live streaming. But if I will answer the questions when it's related to the cultural story. Only thing I don't do is the technical issue. If I have to kind of stop what I'm doing and show it, or teach it, explain it, then that ruins the whole purpose of this live streaming. This is the live streaming where you and I stitch together and to have fun. So if one side, but let's say my side, became the teaching or doing something to get attention, then it's gonna be, it's gonna ruin the whole purpose of doing that. So I'm not gonna stop what I do and then show or explain or teach. But if there's anything I can answer while me stitching the same thing, well, if I stop stitching, which means I have to think. But if there's anything I can answer, that is. And for those who need or who wish to have the technical answers, which requires some explanation, check the videos first on the YouTube channel here. I have quite many videos explaining the possible questions. Last 6 years I've been receiving those questions and I keep answering that over the videos. So you may find the answers there. Yet, after all, if you cannot find the answers, or if you don't have time to look for the answers, if you'd like to kind of avoid detour, then please consider taking my workshop. Domestic, of course, is a good gateway, but it does not come with my personal attention. So please take the other online class, which I promise that you can be, once you are ready to learn, I will be there for you to be able to stitch like we do. It's kind of like I will do everything. And many people can stitch like we do right now. It's not that difficult. It's after all just stitching, so it's not. I truly appreciate you sharing the culture, history, and knowledge of Sashiko online. My pleasure. So domestic course is like the summary of 3 years of me doing the live streaming, for that matter, and some of the summary of the YouTube videos. That's why I think I worried about if the information itself is enough. But I think it was enough. Well, it's a fantastic platform. Besides me being difficult, I have no problem, or like I have only good word for them to say it, so. Okay. Last week's live stream was too good that I kind of burned out. I probably had a pretty good discussion toward the beginning of this live streaming, but the more I watched, the previous live streaming, the more scarier I become, because that was satisfying. That information I provided, not information, the logic I built in the last live streaming was quite good. I even enjoy that. Like, I don't really watch my live streaming back. I don't want to hear my voice when I have time. I rather hear some other people's voice. But I watched that several times back, and the kind of logic, how, like, not logic, explanation, how the beauty in imperfection from the word wabi-sabi got mistranslated into English culture and misinterpreted in the practice of Sashiko. That was something I kept holding as like a, I say that in Japanese word, but like a bone, the fish bone in the throat. It's not like fatal damage. It's not really dangerous, but there's always something in my throat. So I felt like it got out by the previous live streaming. And probably I should repeat that I should repeat that information every time, but it is a little bit more than what it is. It's not a little bit. It is a lot more than what is introduced right now in English. Now I say a lot. Before I said a little, but now the more I learn, the more I find the missing link or missing part. And those were the wisdom, knowledge, and orderly from those who stitched in the past. So, ow! That happens. Well, it's sharp, so it can happen. Sashiko-san, thank you. Yes. It's really not Japanese to admire what I did so much, but it was like, aha moment. Aha, there we go. That is why it's so, making it so uncomfortable to listen to that. So, I wouldn't say wrong, but it's very close to wrong. If you're using the word wabi-sabi to describe the beauty in perfection for the kind of amateur work or not being perfect as the result, that is quite dangerous. So try not to use the word wabi-sabi for that. You may find something like, let's say, something crooked, something like not the shape, something not symmetric. And you may say, wow, that's wabi-sabi. It is not kind of correct. To some people, it's not okay. And I could not explain why it is weird, it is strange, until last week. So the concept of the perfect or beauty itself are different, and then we end up with not translating that. Well, I'm gonna say pretty strong statement now. Just don't learn Sashiko from those who say embrace the imperfection. If the teachers say like, well, it is perfectly fine that a student makes imperfect stitches. It does not have to be perfect the first time. Of course, the stitches are imperfect. Stitches that are not gonna be even, they might not like it. It is going to be imperfect. Of course, the perfectly does not exist in this hand stitching. Well, it does exist, but it's gonna take a lot of time. So I want you to embrace the imperfection. within yourself. I want you to accept what it is. But don't choose the teacher who say embrace the imperfection. That is something you can tell yourself within yourself, but not something teacher should or can say. I will avoid that with all my heart. And if I start saying like embrace the imperfection in teaching, please worry about me. There gotta be reason that I keep saying that. I may need some help in physical or mental reasons, or I may just need money for some reason. I have no idea how it's gonna be, but I will never say that word. If I start saying that, you can contradict or you can attack me, but at the same time, please worry about me. You don't have to worry about me much, but that's the case. It is very strange for me as a native English speaker that people would use wabi-sabi to excuse their lack of trying. It is very strange for me as a native speaker that people would use. So you don't use that. You don't use wabi-sabi to excuse their lack of trying. We should try to do our best work, not be sloppy and say, oh, wabi-sabi, it's so beautiful. Yeah, that's that's a good summary. That's pretty much the summary of what I said in the previous time. I want you to try your best. I want you to keep trying to meet the best for that day, for next day. But unfortunately, some people use the wabi-sabi as the word to describe that sloppiness is okay, or even like a marketing term to sell that, like, not a sloppy, but, you know. Well, sometimes people ask me to, well, not anymore because I was very angry around back then, but there were a few people who asked me for the commission saying that they prefer uneven stitches or bigger stitches. So I make these kind of stitches, right? And they didn't like it because it's even and it's small. It does not look like Sashiko in their definition. And we had a little bit of disagreement. And, you know, in order to have that disagreement, we built a lot of discussions on what to do. But I cannot change this, nor I don't want to change it. That's why I kind of stopped doing the commission work. I can do it, but I do not want to do it because it's a very big, not a pain, but it's very, I was very tired by going through that. It was very sad. You know, what he said was quite strong. He wanted to have wabi-sabi, so he wanted to have uneven stitches. And I'm like, what? I don't understand what you're saying right now. But now I understand what he was saying after 4 years. But now I kind of explained. I could explain myself logically why it happened and what is going on. So I will probably repeat explaining the same thing. And the more I explain, the better I can. So I can probably shorten that. You don't have to listen like 60 minutes live streaming to get it, the point. But that is something I will keep doing that. All right. I hope you have a good night tonight, and I will come back next Thursday. Ooh, I might not come back next Thursday. I may not. That's a very good point. I may not come back next Thursday. I will try to. I will see if I can get on the internet in the hotel I would stay in Auburn. So I'll be in New York, upper state New York, not the New York, Manhattan, New York. I will be up, like northern part of New York State for the 3 days workshop. I think it's full by now. Thank you so much. But if you'd like to join that, please contact them directly. I think that was for a month ago, but there might be some changes. Anyway, I will be there for 3 days, and Thursday I will be traveling, so I may not be here next week, but week after that I'll be here for sure. So until then, I hope you have a good stitching time, and I will see you in 2 weeks. All right.